Hello and welcome back to Tips and Time Savers. I'm Danny Rocks, and in today's lesson I'm going to show you how you can perform what-if analysis. We want to be able to change two variables in a formula at the same time. So I'm going to show you how you can use an Excel data table. Over here in cell B8 I have a formula. The formula is designed to tell me what the net price will be. So I take the price that I pay, multiply it by the quantity that I'm purchasing. The discount is determined inside parentheses, 1 minus the cell that contains the discount rate. In other words, it's going to multiply this by the inverse of the discount. So I'm going to be paying 90% of price multiplied by quantity. Rather than going through in the formula and substituting one value at a time, in other words, change the retail price to $75 and change the quantity to purchase to 25, it's so much easier when we learn how to set up a data table. So notice over here, running across in the row, I have variables at various price points. They will substitute in our data table for the value that is in B3 in our original formula. Running down in the column are variable inputs. They are quantities, so they will substitute in our original formula for the value in cell B4. It's important that you differentiate between columns. Variables in columns run vertically down. Variables for the row run horizontally across. Alright, now we're ready to create our data table. We begin with our anchor cell, the cell that contains the formula. Now we select the inputs running across the rows, the inputs running down the columns, as well of course as the blank cells which will contain the results of our data table. Now go up to the Data tab on the ribbon. In Data Tools you see What If Analysis. There's a drop down and we select Data Table. So you see why I spent the time determining which variables are in the row and which variables are in the column. So my row variables are the price. They run across horizontally. In my original formula, price is cell B3. The variables for the column are the various units that I'm going to purchase. In the original formula, that's in cell B4. Ready? Here we go. Now, there are the results. So at any time, I want to say at $100.50, what is my net price? I just find it right there, $4,500. I could have come to that same result by changing up here $100 for the price and $50 for the units. Now, notice down here that to create the third changing variable, what I applied was data validation. So I created a drop-down list. So if I wanted to see, well, what if it were 15%? You see how that changes? And of course, at any time, I could go through and change any one of these variables. So if I wanted to see 42, then I could follow that across. Or if I wanted to make this, let's say, $115, I could follow this running down. Now let's, before we move on, take a look at how this is set up. Let's take a look at the formula. In this cell, table B3, B4. Let's go to another cell, table B3, B4. So when we create a data table, Excel actually creates what's called an array formula. If I try to change or delete a cell, I can't. I have to delete the entire data table inputs if I made a mistake. And a common mistake is that you got backwards. You put the column across and the row down here. Now if I want to get rid of it, I would have to select it and then delete it and then start over. Alright, now let's go over here and create another data table. This time our formula will be to calculate the monthly payment for a loan. 3 arguments, we want to have a data table that will change 2 of them at the same time. So our monthly payment is a result of 3 arguments. The interest rate, now notice that I'm pointing up here to the annual interest rate, so I divide that by 12 to give me the monthly payment. The second argument is the number of payments. How many payments will I be making? The third variable is the amount that I'm going to borrow, called the present value. I want to be able to change the interest rate. So I have variables that will substitute for cell B4 in the data table, and I want to see at different amounts to borrow, which will substitute for B3 in the formula. And again, the key is to understand the row and the column. So we begin our data table with the cell that contains our formula. We highlight the variables running across the row, we highlight the variables running down the column, go up to Data, Data Tools, What If Analysis, Data Table. In the dialog box, our row is running across horizontally. So that's the interest rate in our original formula, that's cell B4. Our column variables are running down the column. In our original formula, that is cell B3. Click OK, and there you go. It's really that simple. And once again, you could use data validation to create a drop-down so you could see interactively that third variable. Data validation is on the Data tab of the ribbon, Data Tools, and you see Data Validation. In this case, what I've done is I have created a list. So over here was a short list. I just typed in, separated by commas, the variables that I wanted to be able to select from that drop-down. Over here in the data table, I actually had a named range. I have a named range that I've called discount. I have it hidden over here in column M. So if I want to unhide it, there is that list. And so over here, the list that I created for the interest rate came from that named list. So this is one of the tips that I offer on my DVD, the 50 Best Tips for Excel 2007. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.